Hello, everyone. I'm Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast, and welcome back to the show. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. My guest today is Faust Ruggiero. Faust, thank you very much for joining me today.
Claudio, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for inviting me today.
You are a psychologist with 35-year experience in the field. What determined you to take this path?
That's a question I get asked a lot of times, and it's one of those things. I think I was born to do this. I go back to the years when I was very young, and I love to watch people and listen to them and get to know them, and they kept coming to me with whatever was on their mind. So it never stopped.
And, I have a lot of guests who discover their psychic skills early in life. Maybe they're still dependent on their parents or in their teens. And the parents didn't know how to categorize that behavior, like schizophrenia or whatever. And they took the child to someone like you, like a specialist. And usually, if that person is not trained to identify an awakening or a remembering process, they put that individual, that child or teenager, on a chemical treatment. Are you at this point in your career able to identify between these two type of behaviors, one which is like a disease and one which is an awakening or a remembering of who that person is from a spiritual perspective?
Absolutely. When someone is needs medicine or has those conditions, typically we look for irrational kinds of things. Someone who has a spiritual awakening or is looking at things in an alternative way, they're going to be different. But if you question them and you talk with them, it's rational. And you may not agree with it. You may say, well, that's not something that makes sense to me or I want to incorporate in my life. But you can see it has some sound foundations around it. And the person is rational when they deliver it. Someone who is not, that's going to break down. That process will break down. And then you're looking at some other things.
And what will be the first treatment you will offer for someone who is logical and give you the hope that, in fact, they are going through a spiritual process?
You know, I don't call it treatment for me. What I do is, I'll talk with them and usually as you go deeper into the conversation, they themselves will be making some changes in what they're thinking. Not that they're going to change according to what I think, but it's, my job in those situations is to help them refine what they're thinking about. Look at it from some different perspectives, and the brain always wants to learn. So the more information it receives, the better. The more clear are the concepts. So I just talk with them. I validate the fact that they have some alternate ways of looking at things. I don't challenge them on those things, but I will help them go deeper to discover some things that are deeper inside them.
Perfect, thank you. And in the last 35 years, have you seen your field changing in a radical way and approaching people and their issues from various angles?
Oh, I have. It's something I talk about a lot when I started practicing, and it goes back over 40 years, but 35 in private practice. When people would come in the office, back in the 1980s, maybe 5% of them were on medicine. And now when they come in, it's closer to 65 or 70% that are on medicine. So I've seen it evolve into a pharmaceutical plan in order to deal with these things first. People want to go real fast, and they want to get they want to solve their problems very quickly, instant gratification on those. So we used to work a lot without medication, and I still do whenever I can, but they're coming in with it now.
Yes, and as far as I know, there are institutes, medical institutes out there, and research institutes looking at controlled psilocybin treatments, and the results are quite amazing, especially with PTSD people, soldiers, and guys who spend some of their life in the army, and they are healed in 2, 3, 4 sessions sometimes.
Yeah, what's happening is, and it's really in its research stages. People are jumping on that bandwagon, but we really need to slow the movement down a little bit and be a little bit more controlled with what we do. But we're finding that those hallucinogenic substances are getting to the brain centers that are being injured with PTSD, and they're helping people work their way through it. They're calming the anxiety and the depression down, and they're giving people an easier way to deal with things that, as in the service, where things, they've seen people die in front of them, things they come home with that they just can't face. They're able to work through those. The important component to that is that they're not just giving them the hallucinogens and then that's it. There's a whole counseling program that goes with that, and that's the important part. That we want to make sure people understand, and we want to make sure people understand that that needs to be done in controlled circumstances by someone with an expertise in that area.
Exactly, and through this process, I think another facet of using, as you said, this type of treatment is being revealed that is not an addictive treatment. You are done with it for as long as you need it. As I said, 2, 3, 4 sessions, maybe a little bit more, but there is no addiction involved in this process. You are free to go and live your life. But on the other side, on the chemical plan, you are hooked for the rest of your life.
And that's the problem. The drugs that are being administered don't have the strong addictive properties. However, it's back to an individual component. How much of an addictive person am I? There's some people that will experience that and say, "My God, that was wonderful. And I felt so good." And some of those people are going to leave those settings and they're going to experiment just a little bit more, because the human mind, I always say, is expansive. It doesn't just stop with what we give it. It says, "Oh, well, what if I do this now?" So there's always that danger with some of those folks that they may go out and experiment just a little bit.
Yes, and you spend a lot of time in prisons and nursing homes and substance abuse centers. So, do you think that this type of treatment should now be inclusive of these facilities as well, and go deeper, especially prison, which is a very dangerous environment? And from my experience, not because I was there, from what I read and what I watched and listened to others, is not an environment that will really change you to the good, to the best. It's the other way around.
Often, people ask that a lot. They'll say, "Well, the hallucinogens, that's terrible. We shouldn't be using, quote, street drugs to treat people." And I say, well, the pharmaceutical industry is loaded with medications that we know are harmful to people. When you see their ads, they give you this string of so-called side effects, which you and I both know are not side effects, they're bad effects. And they're there, and they're looking at the hallucinogens, and we're not seeing those. So can we use those? Can we begin to expand on the therapeutic approach? Yes, once we have more research to deal with that, because we're dealing with it enough to know that it works with selective populations. Now we want to be able to see, two things: the what we call latitudinal studies, the short studies where we can say, all right, it's working, but the next step is longitudinal studies over 10 years. Are there going to be any long-term effects with hallucinogens? For some people, there can be some bad trips, so to speak, some things that are problematic. Normally, they can see that in the research phase, but we want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be used on the right populations, the right way, and by the right people. That's the other part of it. It's not just a pill that the doc hands out. This is going to put you in a different neurological state quickly. So we want to have someone there that helps you manage that properly.
Exactly. And in this type of treatment, there is the integration, the counseling, as you mentioned. On the other side, or on the other end, when you get the chemicals, you don't have similar support. As far as I know, you are on your own, get your pills, and that's it. And you can have still that bad trip you mentioned. And with hallucinogens, I mean, you can have a bad trip if your trauma is really, really deep, might go 2, 3 lifetimes back, or you really had an abused life, and is you need more than just that particular treatment.
And that's really the gold standard, if you will, for everything that we do. We can give them medication, but then there should always be a follow-up. If we're saying the mind is affected to the point that we want to prescribe something, that first part is the key. The mind is affected. The medication was never, and the pharmaceutical companies will tell you this in their disclaimer. It was never designed to give you counseling, give you the effects of a counseling program. It's only designed to treat the physical part of this, which is the neurology, the chemical balances, those types of things. So they'll give you the disclaimer, but yet we prescribe the drug without the counseling. So, it's very, very problematic there. So anytime we're going to prescribe something, we should, at the very least, have a follow-up with a counseling professional.
Yes, and they can start with microdosing, which is very common these days, and from there they can increase the dose, to 1 gram or whatever. But microdosing is good for calming and calming your nerves and going through the day with no anxiety.
Exactly, and that's why these approaches look so well. Pharmaceuticals are, they're chemicals, they're artificial things that are made in labs. These products we're talking about are natural. That doesn't mean they're absolutely safe, but dealing with those, we have a chance to do some good work again, just so we have the proper guidance. I've had many people over the years that have gotten into hallucinogens on their own, and then 5 years later, we're dealing with some serious bad effects because they did it too much of it. They did it at the wrong time. Your mood going into a hallucinogenic experience is very important. So it's preparing the person for that drug and then bringing them through that into a peaceful experience and then coming out and providing the follow-up. That's the way it should be done if it's done properly.
Yes, I always suggest for someone who wants to do it in a controlled environment, or in a ceremony with a shaman or a specialized person who knows how to hold space, as they say, for that particular person or group of people. That's important.
Absolutely. If we can prepare the mind for what it's going to experience, it's better equipped to deal with it then. And then we're watching and we're providing the proper controls. That person has a much more significant possibility of coming through that successfully.
And do you think that this type of natural treatment is not completely accepted by the facilities we mentioned, like prisons and nursing homes, just because they are in private hands, or because any other
Well, there are other considerations.
Yeah.
First of all, prisons and all those other facilities we're talking about rely heavily on the pharmaceutical companies because our friends, the Food and Drug Administration, said that it was okay. So once that's okay, then their liability goes down. Now we're going to say, well, let's bring in this hallucinogenic drug. The controls aren't quite there. Our friends in Big Pharma are going to come at you, and they're going to try to make you stop doing that. So lawsuits abound, and people aren't going to do that. The pharmaceutical industry has a problem with those things. They're having a problem with marijuana right now because they can't control that. So you get into something that may have some real serious therapeutic advantages, and without side effects, and without a long drug life. It's not here, take this drug for the next 10 years. We might be able to help you through this in less than a year, in less than a few months, for that matter. Pharmaceutical companies don't want to hear that.
Yes, and the lawsuit might be the least of the problems of the person or corporation who wants to push this through, because they might just disappear or their factory might burn down, by mistake. So it happens.
Well, you're hitting on a an important point that we have established norms and they are profitable. And now we're saying we can do this, and that drug you're talking about is very, very inexpensive to deal with. It's naturally produced, and so now this capitalistic way of doing things falls by the wayside, and big pharma and all the companies, all the big companies are involved in this. They stand to lose a lot of money and a lot of power, and they're going to fight that. They're going to fight it tooth and nail.
Yes. And do you think that the state will ever be able to buy back the prisons, improve the system, and slowly retrofit the mentality of those going in?
I think that, a lot of states still maintain their prisons, most do. However, it's being privatized more often because the prisons are run by either counties or states who are investing all this money and tax dollars into it. So they won't have to do that anymore. Not that we will get the money back for the taxes. They'll just use it for something else, but they won't have to, to fund that. When I was counseling in the prison back in the 80s, it cost, and this is a county prison, it cost, I think, $45 a day per inmate to keep them in prison. That's probably $200 a day now. So when you look at that over a prison that might have 3,000 people in it, you're talking an astrological amount of money. And so if the state says, I don't have to do this anymore. The federal government and federal prison said, oh, we don't need to do this. We'll let these private people do it. Their hands are washed of the matter.
Yes.
But the privatized people are still going to go where they can make the most money. It's a money-making proposition.
Yes, like in pretty much any other industry.
Right.
First, in 2016, you start developing the Fix Yourself Empowerment series. I'd like to talk about that. I mean, they had a great application then, and I think they have a much better application now with whatever we went through in the last 3, 4 years. And I think the market segment you're addressing, it's even wider these days. Am I right?
It is. Our emphasis on mental health is growing. Things have changed a bit. We have gone from an in-office counseling situation to most people now are counseling online. And I don't think we're at a point where we have trained people how to counsel online. Number one, that's huge. And there are enough controls on that. More people are getting counseling. That's great. But the quality of the experience, I don't think, is as good as it is in the office. So that's changed. When I wrote the book way back, and I started in 2016 to write it, but I published the first book in 2019. What I wanted to do was simulate the counseling experience. So you are right. It's going to be more applicable today because people aren't getting that counseling experience the way they were. So they're understanding how to augment the counseling approach that they're involved in, or what to do before they get there.
Yes, and I think because you mentioned in person is getting rarer and rarer these days, is the issue with the office buildings. They are not so much occupied, and you might have an issue getting to that office because of transportation costs, security. So, specialists like yourself would rather stay home and use that 2 hour commute time to see maybe 1 or 2 more patients.
Yeah, and you can do that again, just so you're skilled enough to be able to do that. You lose the personal factor online. There are some drawbacks. If you're dealing with a depressed person who doesn't want to leave their house, well, you might say, well, the advantage is they can get counseling, but the disadvantage is they're counseling in the same place they're depressed. So, if they came to your office, maybe they cleaned up a little bit and they did some things and they got out of the house, they got the fresh air, they got a different environment. Now they're sitting at their kitchen table or their living room or wherever they are, One person said, they're working with a person who was still in bed and just rolled over and was counseling that way. So I mean, there's some real disadvantages depending on how you choose to use it.
And I asked you earlier about how your field has changed in the last 35 years, but have the methodologies changed as well in how and what you or your peers, which are graduating in now or have graduated in the last 5, 6, 7 years, are they allowed to prescribe anything else outside the norm, or they are really constrained to follow the process?
I think pretty much they follow the process. I don't think people are being taught that much differently. Regardless of what they teach us, Claudiu, we still have to sit down with the person. We still have to get their background and understand what they're thinking and feeling, and get to know them, and then help them work through whatever their problem is. I think some people will work with more behavioristic components, and change some things that way. Some people will want to talk people through and do cognitive measures. I think that's from therapist to therapist, but the field itself hasn't changed that dramatically that the applications are so different.
But let's say you are aware of sound therapy or energy healing or something else which is natural, is non-invasive, can be done by a certified expert. Would you take or would you have any responsibility and liability if you recommend such modality to one of your clients?
Yeah, you would have some liability, some responsibility there. You're always looking for some type of a certification. However, what I've seen happen is sometimes the coaches and the people who are certified in a training, maybe that was 6 months or a year, unless they have the typical licenses, when they're challenged in court, they don't hold up too well. Lawyers, lawyers make their money by tearing people apart. So if I'm going to refer someone, to someone, I know that person. If I happen to hear someone online and they were into this new procedure and I even like the procedure, maybe I use it a little bit and I want to use their expertise, I would have to then really present the person I'm sending there with all the documentation that lets them sign off so I don't have to go to court and sit with an attorney.
Yes. I would like to go deeper into two of your books. One is the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook. How can someone overcome her or his anxiety these days?
Well, it's a great question. When we treat anxiety, we have a tendency to go backward. We go to the mind first, forgetting that the mind exists in the body. And I always tell people, if we can calm your body down, because that's really what you're telling me. There's some of the people that can't turn their minds off. But when we calm that body down, we lose 50% of the anxiety, so to speak, right away. And I start by let's do a purge. And they'll say, what do you mean? I say, well, how much coffee are you drinking today? Yeah, and well, that doesn't bother me. And I said, well, yeah, it does. It's an accelerant. All the sugar and the carbs and the energy drinks and the sodas and things, they're going to contribute. I'm not going to say that's what caused your anxiety, but if we take what's going in your body that doesn't work well out of your body, that's a good start. We'll talk about schedules and enough sleep, proper nutrition, exercise. So let's get the body to do what it needs to do. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be talking to them about what else is going on in your life. Are you coming out of a relationship and that's painful? Do you have past trauma or abuse? Let's look at those things also. So while I'm helping them get the body calmed down, I want to get their intellect and their emotions in the game and start to look at what may be causing it on those levels. For some people, it's a neurotransmitter problem. They're not getting the proper chemicals to the brain, so the brain doesn't shut off when it's supposed to. So they say, I'm exhausted, and I go to bed and my eyes open up and my mind keeps on going. Okay, well, that's usually an indication that either you're doing something wrong physically or there may be a chemical problem.
And is the approach for anger different? Do you tell them to kick the pillow or kick the wall or?
With anger, again, I'm going to go physical first, and I'm also going to do that history and find out what may be there. With some people, we get those neurotransmitter problems where there's so much anger developing because the brain doesn't have an opportunity to calm down. So again, we're going to do that. We're going to look at substance abuse. We're going to look at conditions in their life, what they learn to do, growing up. If I'm brought up in a family and my father would beat everyone every day. Well, I learned violence, so I may react quick. We're going to look at fears. And some people, particularly men, when they're afraid, we don't tell people we're afraid. We tell people we're angry. So I'm going to look at all those uh, characteristics, all those things that are in life at the moment. An interesting thing about anxiety and depression, both of them, we have to go to the body. Anger, anxiety, depression, there's always a physical component with that. So I want to make sure that's the case. I'll refer them to family physicians. Let's get the blood work done. Let's find out if your thyroid's where it needs to be, your hormone levels are where they're supposed to be. A lot of people will go and they'll start treating all the intellectual, the mental stuff, and they didn't get the core stuff done. And it comes back and says, well, my thyroid now is through the roof. Well, yeah, that's going to make you more anxious. That's going to make you more angry too. So we want to make sure we have we're holistic in the approach, is what I'm saying.
Yes, and it's also emotional. And maybe
Yes.
you are aware of and familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, who built his body back from being broken just through the power of his mind and energy, and he's helping thousands of people doing the same. And he's not the only one. There are others who are just working through their emotions back into the physical and back into the mind. Yes, we are holistic.
Yeah, and if we can do all those together, then you can really teach a person how in their own life to be holistic practitioners in their own life. That's really what we want to do, because we are physical, we are intellectual, emotional, and spiritual beings. So, I talk about that balance. If we can get a balance on all those attributes, that's where, the good feelings, nirvana, so to speak, that's where all that comes from, that balance.
Yes, and we don't have balance these days, unfortunately, through everything that's going on around us locally, at countryside, country-wise and global-wise, global level. Everything is pulling us in many directions, and we really have to somehow, at least in my opinion, create our own bubble, our own universe, and stay away from what's negative and what can impact our psyche.
Well, Claudia, what we've done is we've surrendered our essence to the outside world and we follow along, but I've always said, I don't know who we're following when we do that because there doesn't seem to be one leader with a very good approach. We follow whatever's trending and we follow those things that make us feel good quickly. And we're doing it with anger and we're attacking each other. But we're not working on us. We're not becoming peaceful people inside ourselves. And we all can do that. It's about where you put your focus.
Yes, indeed. And Faust, in the last 35 years, have you added any tools to your quivers of arrows, medical arrows and professional arrows?
When I started writing the book, I put 52 processes together that I wanted people to work with, and we modified some of them, but the thrust of it really is to get strong on the inside. And I talk about a lot about being grateful people, gratitude, but not gratitude for I'm thankful I got this. That's not gratitude. That's thankfulness. Gratitude is when you wake up and you say, everything in my world is something I'm grateful for. You feel it, and then you wrap it around everything else. When we do those kinds of things, when we're humble, because people, everyone wants wisdom, but you can't have wisdom without humility. I keep telling people that if you're arrogant, then you feel you got the message, so you stop learning at that point. So I'm trying to get people to be humble about it, keep learning, and you can learn from everyone. In every experience. I will guarantee I'll walk away from what we're doing today, and later I'll say, okay, that made sense. And I learned just a little bit. I want people to understand that. And I want them to, get that balance, to understand that the goal of that is something I call pure love. When you have the balance, everything is a warm, loving world. That's where we want to get to.
Yes.
It's not impossible. It's not an ascension to that point. It's just learning how to balance those four attributes. That's all it is.
Yes. Thank you. Beautiful. So first, we touch a little bit on this subject, but when you look around these days to the world around us, what troubles you the most?
For me, it's actually what I wrote about with the last book. It's the anger that's out there. Um, we attack quickly. Social media has evolved to a point where it's it's an attack platform. We could do so much good with that particular medium. We don't. The anger we're expressing, we are divided everywhere. And what concerns me the most, which is the direct answer to the question, is that we've embraced it. We now look at it as the way we live. If I see it everywhere. Before I become your friend, I have to know how you believe, what you believe on these subjects. What is your religion, and what is your politics, and what do you feel about this topic and that topic and that topic? And if you agree with me, I'll be your friend. And if you don't agree with me, I'm not so sure. And you and I'm sure both know that we may learn more from the people we don't agree with than from the people we do. So that's the stuff that concerns me, that we're getting to the point that we have divided, and we will only listen to opinions that support our own. That really threatens learning, and it threatens our ability to be close as a society, and we need that.
Yes, and I think the last 4 years became a social sorting of a kind, when we kind of move left and right, shuffle around to find the right people, the right community, let go or to the ones which we didn't resonate with anymore because of what you said. And in my opinion, based on what I read, it was all control. It was all desire to happen that way, because divided, we are easier to be controlled and manipulated. So people are slowly waking up, and they're realizing what's going on. And I heard someone which is spiritually connected recently said that those who are awakening up these days will be so pissed, realizing how much manipulation they went through, because it's a brutal awakening. It's not like me and you and others, which we've been awake maybe for 10, 12, 15 years, knowing and understanding what's going on, and we're called conspiracy theorists. But I lived to that, and I didn't bother, didn't affect me in any way. But these guys waking up these days are going to be, as I said, and as you mentioned, very angry.
And they are, and it's the oldest strategy in the book. If I can get you to be off balance, and I have you fighting these other little wars, I can take my personal agenda and push it right past you because I've distracted you. So I was doing an interview with a person of color who says, "Why do you think racism is still here?" I said, "Because we want it here, because it's profitable." And she just looked at me, and I said, "Think about this. If you take one person at a time and just deal with that one person, love that one person in the moment you're in, if we all did that, this gets easy. But we keep fighting it, and the politicians and the big business people, you may know, keep pushing that. They don't go tell you to be racist, but they keep bringing up the subject, so we keep seeing it. And meanwhile, the agendas are being pushed past us, and before we know it, we're going to be in a place that we never thought we were going to be."
Yes, I mean, another good example is what's going on in the Middle East. Jews and Palestinians, they live, Palestinians, they live together for thousands of years. But at one point, that balance wanted to be broken, and the powers to be started their own process. And this is where we are today, after 60 something years.
Oh, it's a global world we live in. It's not, like it used to be, your town or your state or your country. It's global, and everyone is working together and against each other. They all have these agendas, and you can help me with mine, and so war comes out over here, and I profit from that, and then meanwhile, I'll do this for you, and that's what they're doing. All these deals are being made, and people don't understand that part of it. It is a global economy. It's a global way of thinking. There are no more moves that are made just to satisfy what happens in one's country. It's across the globe. So keeping people off balance, that's a necessity for those folks in power to continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah, that's why for the next coming years, maybe the best approach is community is gold. Find your own people and build that amazing community.
It is, and it's like anything else. If we go into any situation with a positive mindset, which says, "I'm going to do well in here. I'm going to help people here. I want this to be something that's special," we'll go into that. Usually, it works that way. But when we go into it with anger and mistrust, then that's what we bring to it. Others may be bringing the same thing. Now we have problems. It's just about the way we individually think. I never think about, well, that person made me think that way. I made me think that way, whatever it was.
Yes, because we are a reflection of what that person triggered in us.
Yeah,
So we have to be conscious of what happened.
absolutely.
Yeah. First, do you have a daily spiritual practice?
I do. I wake up and I have my prayers and my spiritual connection that I start with. I begin also with the concepts I was telling you, love, humility, and gratitude. I make sure those are part of everything I'm doing. I plug myself into my world as a component designed to bring love and peace. I'm in service at all times. So those ideas are in my head every day. I do meditate every day, so I keep that going. So I keep in touch with my core, so to speak. And then I have other things. I am a physical person, so I do have a training center in the basement, and I do work out every day. I close my day with some meditation and some prayer and reflection on what occurred that day with an idea based on what I did today. I think I'm going to tweak this a little bit and maybe do that a little bit better tomorrow. So that's a ritual. Those rituals are in my day every day.
Thank you for sharing. And over the years, have you found a spiritual teacher, guru that really made a difference in your life?
No, no, not one, many. I've followed teachings of Mother Teresa, of Gandhi, Nelson Mandela was huge. Pope John Paul II was a wonderful, peaceful man. Dr. King. So I like to incorporate. Einstein is another one. Those are the people that I have looked at and been able to incorporate things that they've done and they've said, and those resonate with me. I try to stay away from one because what happens is then you kind of make that your hero, and we all know that none of us are heroes. We're all flawed in some way or another. But collectively, when we can put it together, we can make a lot of sense then.
Yes, thank you. And there are any other programs or services you like to mention for those who want to reach out to you and they are in need?
If anyone wants to contact me, my website is there. I don't like to offer specific cookie cutter programs, if you will. What people will do is they'll email me, and then I will get their personal concerns, and then I'll design something specifically for them.
Perfect, thank you. And as a conclusion, let's say conclusion, what would you consider an accomplished life?
Accomplished life is one that, in my mind, and I'm really talking about me now, Claudiu, it's in service of other people, is grateful and humble, and when it's all said and done, can look out and say, I made the world just a little bit better. Maybe some people heard me talk and they said, gee, that made sense. And they incorporated that. Maybe it was one person, maybe it was many. But my whole purpose, my reason to be here is to be in service of other people. So when it's all said and done, I want to be able to, if it, so to speak, put my head on the pillow and say, okay, Lord, I'm done. I've done this. I've done the best I could to serve the people that you brought to me. And if I can do that, I think I have a life that is accomplished.
Yeah, and as Robin Sharma will say, who will cry when you die, or who will celebrate when you die, having the same meaning, celebrate because
Exactly.
they knew you and they had the chance to interact with you and because you changed their life.
Exactly.
Yeah. We are approaching the end of the interview. Any final thoughts?
The only thing I love, and I love to close interview this way, is to tell everyone, try not to go and find yourself, and you're not going to find it outside of yourself. Be willing to enjoy the process of creating who you are. And you'll know if you're doing well because you're enjoying the process of change and of growth. It will be challenging, but if you enjoy the process, your life will change and you will be happy.
Faust, thank you very much for your time, for the wise words, and all the best in what you are trying this year. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me aboard, and the same to you.
Thank you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Leave a comment, like it, share with your friends. Visit spiritualinspired.ca, and until next time, love and gratitude.